Hi everybody, this is just some guy, and today I'm just going to do a quick video. As you can hear, I'm sick. I have a wonderful sinus infection that always happens at the beginning of the fall, no matter what. It's happened since I was in high school. And of course, this is why my mouth is clickier and wetter than normal. So I'm just going to try to do something really quick. First, I want to just give a little update of the channel. I looked at the numbers today, and I just want to thank everybody who subscribed. I have 407 subscribers and almost 11,000 views. And it's been a month since I created the channel. So that's, pretty good considering I started with nothing, and it's jumped actually pretty high within the last week. It's almost doubled. So thanks for everybody who's been watching and subscribing. Awesome job. So today I want to talk about a little book called The True Believer by Eric Hoffer. And the reason I want to bring this up is because it's pretty relevant to what's been going on at Marvel, especially with Nick Spencer's craptacular Secret Empire. Diversity in Comics mentioned in his most recent video that Nick Spencer is a mean-spirited guy, and a lot of what he does on Twitter and a lot of what you see in his own work is funny, but it's like this sort of hate-filled, really digging in towards somebody kind of humor. It's not something that's meant to make everybody else laugh, but to just show how much he hates people, and probably himself. Micah Curtis was also talking about this in one of his videos about the Thor books, and he was commenting how a lot of the writers at Marvel, particularly folks like maybe Jason Aaron, don't really seem to like superhero comics, and they don't seem to like the fan base, and it's really silly for Marvel to hire people who don't really want to deal with the people who buy their products. One of the people who had commented had mentioned this as well a few days ago, and so I just wanted to hark back to that point. The general question is basically, why are people like this? Why do they do this? Why do they behave this way? And Eric Hoffer in his book The True Believer breaks this down, and he really explains it well as part of the subtitle, Thoughts on the Nature of Mass Movements. And what he does in this book is he tells you exactly why these mass movements are so appealing, how they work, and who likes to join them, and how interchangeable they are. And if anyone's followed politics recently, you'll notice that there's very little difference between the insanity that comes out of the far right and the far left. They sound exactly the same. They're both authoritarian. They both want to control everything. And if you look at what happened in, say, Charlottesville, in Boston, you'll see that the groups are basically interchangeable. They were even dressed the same. So in terms of how this affects comic books, the reason I think this is important is because Eric Hoffer describes the type of person that is basically the Nick Spencers and the Jason Aarons out there. And these are people who turn to these political movements because they don't really have much to offer. And he really breaks it down in one of his sections under the title Misfits, and it's section 37. So I'm just going to read this section, just so you can get an idea. And I want you to think of people like Jason Aaron, like Gail Simone, like Chip Zdarsky, even Mark Waid. Just keep them in mind as I read this. So he starts off by saying here, the permanent misfits are those who, because of a lack of talent or some irreparable defect in body or mind, cannot do the one thing for which their whole being craves. No achievement, however spectacular, in other fields can give them a sense of fulfillment. What they undertake becomes a passionate pursuit, but they never arrive. They never pause. They demonstrate the fact that we can never have enough of what we really do not want, and that we run fastest and farthest when we run from ourselves. The permanent misfits can find salvation only in a complete separation from the self. They usually find it by losing themselves in the compact collectivity of a mass movement. By renouncing individual will, judgment, and ambition, and dedicating all their powers to the service of an eternal cause, they are at last lifted off the endless treadmill which can never lead them to fulfillment. Now here's a part that's really important, and I really want you guys to keep this in mind. Keep Secret Empire in mind, keep everything that Marvel's been doing with the SJW stuff in mind, keep the milkshake stuff in mind when I read this part. The most incurably frustrated, and therefore the most vehement among the permanent misfits, are those with an unfulfilled craving for creative work. Both those who try to write, paint, compose, etc., and fail decisively, and those who, after tasting the elation of creativeness, feel a drying up of the creative flow within and know that never again will they produce aught worthwhile, are alike in the grip of a desperate passion. Neither fame, nor power, nor riches, nor even monumental achievements in other fields can still their hunger. Even the wholehearted dedication to a holy cause does not always cure them. Their unappeased hunger persists, and they are likely to become the most violent extremists in the service of their holy cause. That's pretty much the reason why you're seeing what happened with Secret Empire. That's why you're seeing what's been happening with all of the Marvel characters where they replaced them. All these creators know that they will never be able to come up with anything anywhere near as good as those original characters. And then you have people like Mark Waid, who knows that he's past his prime, he's never going to come up with anything to top what he's done before. And this movement allows him some validation. It gives him people to hang around who will just praise him for whatever he does. It doesn't matter whether or not what he's doing is good. And you can see there's still an element in his writing where he wants to tell good stories, but that need to play to this mass movement is trumping that. When you get someone like Nick Spencer or Gail Simone or even Jason Aaron, you're getting people who know that they will never be able to create something on the scale of, say, Watchmen or The Dark Knight Returns, or even something that's, a fan favorite, but probably not that good in the long run, like Age of Apocalypse. They're never going to come up with anything like this. Even someone like Bendis kind of realizes that his events are not anywhere near as memorable or as great as some of these older events. This is a problem that they have, that they realize that they're not going to be able to outdo these older things, and so the only thing that they can do is tear them down, because the success of those older things is a reminder of their own imperfections and their own inability to achieve anything great. That's what Secret Empire ultimately becomes. It becomes a symbol of the regressive left's inability to be creative. At their most creative, all they can do is destroy an icon. What does that tell you about their skill? So I want to thank everybody who's been subscribing and watching the videos. As soon as I can get rid of the sinus infection and all the mouth clicks, I'll be putting some more videos up. So thanks for listening.